Good morning, folks. It's time for Democratic Perspective, brought to you by the Verde Valley Independent Democrats, a weekly talk show about the crucial political issues facing the Verde Valley, Sedona, Northern Arizona, and the nation at large. Join us for a stimulating, thought-provoking discussion. You'll get the facts as we focus on the challenges facing everyone.
Good morning, Sedona. It's Monday, May 8th, 2023, and this is the Democratic Perspective, which is broadcast each Monday morning at this time over KAZM 780 AM in beautiful West Sedona, Arizona. I'm Stephen Hanks, and if my voice doesn't sound familiar to our regular listeners, that's because I'm guest hosting this morning for our longtime host, Stephen Williamson, who is off this week and next, when regular co-host Karen McClellan will be sitting in for Stephen. And by the way, if you get confused with the first names, I only got this gig last week because Mr. Williamson and I spell our first name the same way. We try to honor our mothers by using the PH in Stephen. So the theme of today's show couldn't be more timely, given the news of the past few weeks and even the events of the past few days. We're going to talk about gun violence prevention and the epidemic of both mass shootings and random acts of gun violence in our country that has turned the issue of guns into a public health crisis. But before I offer some thoughts, and not prayers, and bring in our very special guests today who have called in, I want to tell you about some upcoming events being offered by our major sponsor, the Democrats of the Red Rocks, where I am proud to be a member of the board. The Next Door Breakfast, presented live and on Zoom, will be on Friday, May 19th from 9:30 to 11 a.m., and will feature the same issue we'll be discussing this morning. And Door has some very special guests in the work for that event, which happens monthly on the third Friday of the month. If you're a Door member, and if you're not, you should be, keep an eye on your emails and social media for the details on guests and the Zoom link. The following evening, if that wasn't enough, if the breakfast wasn't enough for you, the following evening on Saturday, May 20th, from 7 to 10 p.m., Door is presenting Dancing with the Dems fundraiser. This is going to be a great event at the Sedona Elks Lodge on 110 Airport Road in Sedona. There's going to be live music provided by Big Daddy D and the Dynamites. I don't know if Tom Tabak knows of them. Scrumptious hors d'oeuvres and a full no-host bar. For all the information on tickets, go to democratsoftheredrocks.org. So now on to the topic at hand. Saturday afternoon, I attended a great event here in Sedona called Piano on the Rocks. It was a classical concert at the Sedona Methodist Church. And when we got to intermission, I looked at my phone. I had my phone off, obviously, but I checked my phone. And, you know, when you have your phone on airplane, you don't get any notifications. But when you take it off airplane, you start getting notifications. And I was shocked but not surprised that the notification that I got was a Washington Post breaking news about a shooting in a Texas mall, which has turned out to be 9 dead and many people injured. It seems like this is something that I see on my phone almost every day. I know it's not every day, but it feels that way. And now the mass shootings have morphed into random acts of killing because people carry guns and use them with impunity when somebody looks at them cross-eyed. Now, I've been giving a lot of thought to all the various proposals on gun violence laws and repeal of gun laws. And the David Letterman show came to mind because, you know, one of the most popular segments of that was David Letterman's top 10 list he would do every show. So I thought I'd put together a David Letterman top 10 list, not necessarily in order of importance, And when I started writing out this list, I ended up with 15 different points. And I'm going to go through them now, and this will be, I think, a good segue into introducing our guests. So here are my top 15 gun violence prevention laws we need and repeals of current gun laws we have to have. And again, this is in no particular order of importance, but I'm sure a lot of you know which are the most important. So, number 1, we should have gun licensing and registration. 2, we should have a 30-day waiting period when somebody wants to have a gun. 3, we should have an ammunition sales database. 4, gun owners should have liability insurance, just like we have for automobiles. And by the way, the licensing and registration also applies to the automobile comparison. Number 5, we should repeal the law that shields gun manufacturers from civil liabilities. 6, we should institute red flag laws. And by the way, a red flag law is a gun violence prevention law that permits a state court to order the temporary removal of firearms from a person who they believe may present a danger to others or themselves. We need new gun storage laws. Gun owners can make their homes and communities safer by storing their guns securely. This means storing them locked, unloaded, and separate from ammunition. Securing firearms protects children and adults by preventing unintentional shootings and gun suicides. We should make the creation of ghost guns, like those being made over 3D printing, illegal. We should close the bump stop loophole. Bump stops or bump fire stocks are gun stocks that can be used to assist in bump firing, which is an act of using the recoil of a semi-automatic firearm to fire ammunition cartridges in rapid succession. We should eliminate permitless carry and open carry laws. There should be a national gun ownership starting at age 21, not at 18, which some states are doing. Here are the big ones. Universal background checks, a total no-brainer that should have been done after Sandy Hook. We should ban assault weapons, and we should ban high-capacity magazines. Those are 15 laws, and by the way, not one of those proposals infringes on anybody's Second Amendment rights. And by the way, speaking of the Second Amendment, at the door breakfast on the 19th, we're going to show an incredible video that our current Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, did when he was running for that office, totally eviscerating the arguments that people make about the Second Amendment and what it really means. So you might want to check the breakfast to hear that. So now I want to bring on our special guests. I'm really pleased to have them. Teresa Neiberg retired to Arizona from West Virginia in 2010. Her career was in healthcare as a radiology manager. Teresa had no intention of becoming involved in Arizona politics, but she got involved with Moms Demand Action in 2018 and learned that gun violence is more important than school shootings and how important this work is. She is currently the Moms Demand Action Arizona legislative lead, which means she works with volunteers across the state, encouraging our lawmakers to govern with gun safety as a top priority. Marie Thearle, M.D., is a volunteer with Arizonans for Gun Safety. She's been a leader in the gun violence prevention advocacy for 4 years, a retired physician whose encore career is as an adjunct professor. As a mother of 2 children and an educator, Marie is passionate about working to reduce the gun violence public health crisis, which is exactly what it is. And by the way, I'm a Joe Biden fan, but I think our president it's about time he declared what's going on with guns in our country as a national health crisis. And I don't know what that means off the top of my head about what he could do. Maybe our guests will be able to chime in on that. So, Teresa and Marie, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Marie, I'll start with you. I was mucking around on the internet the last couple of days, and I stumbled on an Every Town for Gun Safety page on their website talking about secure gun storage, which I know a lot of people that are working on gun violence prevention in Arizona are focusing on. I know that there's low-hanging fruit, things that you think you could accomplish, possibly, even in Arizona. And I saw some statistics that were really incredible, that 54% of gun owners don't lock all their guns securely. Every year, nearly 350 children under the age of 18 unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else. 4.6 million children in the United States live in a home with at least one unlocked and loaded firearm. I'm not sure whether this is your number one issue, but let me know your thoughts about this specifically and about some of the laws that I talked about in general.
Okay, well, thank you. I would say that what the public is a public health crisis, but the issue of safe storage really highlights the fact that in this country, when it comes to the issue of guns, we're failing to find the right balance between rights and responsibilities. And I think that's exemplified by safe storage. Sure, if you want to own a gun, that's great. But you then have a responsibility to safely store your gun and make sure you keep it out of the hands of children. So in this country, firearms are the leading cause of death in kids less than 18. In Arizona, it's second to motor vehicle accidents. It's so heartbreaking because it feels like each one of those deaths, whether homicide or suicide, are preventable if we just kept the guns out of the hands of children. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple different methods that can be done to encourage safe storage. One is to create a culture of responsibility among gun owners. So those are like public health messages, billboards, public service announcements, encouraging people to safely store their guns. Teresa and I together have both worked in school districts to try to encourage school districts to remind families that if they own a gun to safely store their guns, that helps reduce suicides among adolescents who, can be at a tumultuous time of their life. But it also helps prevent school shootings because for the majority of school shootings, 80%, the gun that was used came from the home of a family member, and usually the kid just grabs it that morning because, kids are kind of impulsive.
Right.
So Jen Longden this year, from the representative from LD5, introduced a law called Christian's Law, which would have a civil penalty for any gun owner who didn't safely store their gun, and then it was resulted in a tragedy. She had bipartisan support of it, but she didn't have the support of the committee member where the bill was assigned to. So, the committee leader. Mm-hmm. So, the committee chair. And so it didn't get heard.
No.
And Christian's Law is named after a little boy, I guess he was a teenager, who went for a sleepover. And parents said, the pandemic's ending. We want our kids to have a social life, sent their child to sleep over. The boys were playing with a gun that was the parent's gun, and he got shot and killed when the gun unintentionally went off. Mm. So it's just like those kind of tragedies you see, they're completely preventable with basic responsibility.
And, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say the interesting thing about you focusing on that is, we hear about shootings like what happened over the weekend in Allen, Texas, but there are dozens and dozens of these kind of gun tragedies that are happening all over the country that never make the papers. right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then I would just say, just to highlight two of the other things that three of the other things you mentioned. One is the assault weapons ban. I mean, every mass shooting, it's the same type of rifle.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a ban in the past, so that 100% on that one. Closing the background check loophole. So right now, if you go to a store with a licensed gun dealer, you will have to go through a background check. And they work. But if you go to like the internet or somebody selling guns out of the back of their car,
right,
you don't have to go through a background check. So states like Connecticut have something called a permit to purchase, where you have to get the permit before you can be allowed to purchase the gun from anybody. And then my final thing that I really think is possible here in Arizona is increasing the training required. If you purchase a gun, that you have to go through some kind of mandatory training. Right now, it's like you could get a concealed weapons permit and buy a gun without a background check through doing like an online course in Arizona. That's kind of crazy. So there's been a recent letter to the editor by some of our veterans talking about what the training veterans are required to do before they're even allowed to like handle a real gun. And I really think we should hold our civilian gun owners to the same level of safety requirements as our military personnel are held to.
You know, that's something that when Adrian Fontes, in his video talking about the Second Amendment, he discusses how he trained soldiers on the use of firearms, and the manual that they have to read and study looked as big as the Bible. I mean, and they have to do it every year. So you're totally on the mark with that last comment. I mean, it's absurd that there isn't training and licensing of gun ownership, just like we have with automobiles. Teresa, you know, I know you work with Marie on a lot of this legislation, and you're with Mom. What is Moms Demands Actions group doing specifically in Arizona? Are you guys working on anything different than some of the other organizations?
I don't know if we're doing anything different, but with Moms Demands Action, but we do and encourage our volunteers to reach out to their legislators, to let their legislators know what we want and what we don't want. We have meetings with our legislators when they'll meet with us. There have been some who have refused to meet with us this session. And as we mentioned, letters to the editor. We are writing letters to the editor, and we are emailing our legislators. And then this actually, on the Mother's Day weekend, the Saturday before Mother's Day weekend, there's a campaign through every town regarding the assault weapons ban. And what we're saying is we don't want flowers, we don't want a brunch. What we want is an assault or the assault weapons ban reenacted. And there are events going on across the state. In Arizona, there'll be a march in the northern part of Phoenix on Saturday morning. So that's something that has just come about. But the legislative session, the state legislative session, of course, is winding down, and I do want to note that in spite of everything that has happened, even in the last week or so, our legislature has passed 7 bad gun bills that have been vetoed by Governor Hobbs. And there are 2 to be voted on today on the floor of the Senate. And they are a bill that would allow anyone that has a concealed carry permit to concealed carry on college campuses. And then there's also one that would I'm sorry, I'm looking for it here. would protect a firearm that has been modified in Arizona from any federal restrictions. And I also would like to note that there was one bill that was introduced and passed through both houses that wanted to repeal having silencers on weapons in Arizona. And just thinking about what happened on Sunday, if someone would be using a gun with a silencer, the policeman that was there wouldn't have known where the shooting, that maybe even the shooting was happening until much later.
Yeah. You mentioned the concealed carry, and that brought something to mind that I experienced recently, which when I thought about it, I found a little scary and appalling. There's a yearly picnic in the village of Oak Creek every year out by the Oak Creek golf course in the park over there. And it's the one day of the year, at least in my experience, that you see a mass quantity of children running around. There aren't a lot of children in Sedona, and I do see some at the high school. But so this is a beautiful day, and kids running around at this picnic. And a person that I knew showed up, who I also know is a gun owner. And we got into a conversation. We hadn't seen each other for a while, and we were exchanging small talk. And I don't know how the gun subject came up, but I just happened to say to this person, "Are you packing right now?" And this individual said, "I always have it on me." And it was somewhere in a pocket or under, a long sweatshirt or whatever it was the person was wearing. And now I know this person, and they're really nice. They're a nice person who just happens to be a gun enthusiast. But when I left the picnic, it occurred to me, there were kids running all over this place, and there was somebody on premises outside who had concealed carry gun on them. What would have happened if I had gotten into an argument with this person about guns? I think you can catch my drift here. And just that one little episode to me was scary to think about.
Yeah, the whole concealed weapon permit is scary, for the reasons that Marie mentioned. And also, concealed carry permit holders can carry firearms within 1,000 feet of a school, which is otherwise prohibited by the Federal State School Act. So, that's something that a concealed weapon permit carrier can do. And they can also carry in bars and restaurants that haven't otherwise prohibited it by putting a sign in their window, although they're not allowed to drink. But, they're allowed to carry in bars, which is kind of unbelievable to me. And it's also, so it's easy to get a concealed carry permit in Arizona. And so there are 37 states that where someone with an Arizona permit can travel with their firearms, and then also those people can come to our state. To get a concealed carry permit in Arizona, you have to be a United States citizen, but you don't have to be an Arizona citizen. So anyone from those states can come here and get a concealed carry permit and have the same privileges that Arizona concealed carry weapons permit holders have.
Yeah, I wonder to tell you both about a recent poll that amazingly was a Fox News poll. And I'm going to read you these numbers, and maybe what the comparison is in Arizona. But here was the Fox News poll when they asked people whether or not they support certain laws about guns. Background checks, 87%. Enforcing existing gun laws, 81% in favor. Requirement for gun purchases at age 21, 81%. Mental health checks requirement, 80%. Red flag laws, 80%. And a 30-day waiting period, 77%. I mean, these are not even close. And that's a Fox News poll. Looking at those different issues, what do you know about what kind of percentage there is in Arizona in support of these things?
Yeah, so it's similar. So the polls that have been done in Arizona show sort of similar rates where it's between 80 and 90% of people are interested in better gun safety requirements across the board, no matter what issue, which bill you ask them about. In particular, support of closing the background check loopholes has very high support in the polls that have been done in Arizona. So the Arizona Public Health Association has actually issued a recent report this year on gun violence prevention in Arizona, and that includes that statistic. So but I actually want to follow up on that with the background check. So part of it is people don't understand, in some ways, how the loopholes that exist in Arizona, because I feel like they are kind of easy to fix. So as Teresa was mentioning, if you have a concealed weapons permit, which is easy to get with an online course, it makes you exempt from the background check loophole. So if you can go, background check rule. So if you go to a gun dealer and you say, here's my concealed weapon permit, they can just sell you a gun without doing a background check.
Right.
And the bill today that Teresa was mentioning that's going to be voted on would allow concealed weapons on college campuses in Arizona.
Oh, jeez.
Because my college-age kid is not going to go to college in Arizona because that bill has been introduced a few times now.
Have you found that the Republicans in the Arizona House and Senate have become more strident about this issue and even other issues since a Democratic governor, Secretary of State, and Attorney General have been elected, or is it pretty much the same atmosphere as before?
I think it's pretty much the same atmosphere as before. I think that we do have some more extreme Republicans now that are pushing the bills, but most of these bills have been introduced in several sessions before and will continue to be introduced. I kind of feel like after the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was passed in the August of 2022, that if you go through that act and read about all the things that the state government should be doing, I feel like our legislature has done the complete opposite of everything on that list. So I feel like it's probably a combination of having more Democrats ruling or governing in our state, but also the effect of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, I think has kind of from what I can see, has prompted them to act in the exact opposite of everything that is thought that they should be doing in the state.
Yeah. I'd like both of you to give an opinion on this one. Obviously the legislature is really tight with Democrats and Republicans. It's pretty clear that to get the legislation we would like to see on gun violence prevention as well as abortion or whatever the issue may be, we'll probably need to flip those houses. What do you think the chances are of that happening? Are you hopeful of that happening in the next election? What's your feeling about that?
Well, I'm always hopeful.
Right.
Me too. So I'm always hopeful. I do think that a lot of the fight is going to be in LD 13, where Jennifer Pollock just said she won't be running again. Right. And then LD 17, which is closer to Tucson, where that was a race that was much closer than expected last time. And then Yuma, a little bit of a wild card. But I think it's essential because I disagree with Teresa a little bit. I do think that the Arizona legislature has become a little bit more extreme this session, and I think it's really who they've chosen to be in leadership.
Right. And did they choose who should be in leadership to counteract the Democratic leadership in the state right now? Katie Hobbs, Fontes, etc.
Maybe, but those decisions were made. It seems like some of those decisions were made even before the elections were final.
What is there any movement in Arizona, and you can educate me on this, to do some of the things that Texas is doing, like changing the voting age from 21 to 18, things like that, to become more extreme?
You mean the gun ownership age?
Yeah.
Yeah, that bill was introduced, right, Teresa?
Yes, they wanted to lower the age to 18.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they have the same, like the permit. There's a few legislators who, on the extreme end, are very interested in permitless carry, and that was really in my opinion, and from what I can see from the data, that was the big change in Texas that started when all these, like a lot of the mass shootings are happening in Texas recently, and that seems to be correlated with when permitless carry was enacted.
Yeah, that seems to be the laboratory for all the most extreme laws. I was watching Morning Joe on MSNBC this morning, and one of the little graphics that they ran was a list of where mass shootings in the United States has happened. I guess we're talking about over the last 20, 25 years. And I hadn't thought about it on this level until I saw this chart. And this is how, when you hear this or you see this list and you know that nothing is being done on a federal and many state level, it's what makes you the most outraged. So here is the list where mass shootings have happened: elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, universities, churches, banks, outlet malls, in the workplace, personal homes, a dance studio, an LGBTQ bar, a country music festival. That's what that was the Las Vegas shooting. Restaurants, grocery stores, post office, movie theater, and a synagogue. That's the infamous Pittsburgh shooting. That almost covers everything. As mothers who are very involved in this issue, how do you maintain your sanity in doing this work? I mean, I'm just curious about how you both process what's going on and deal with it.
I guess, like Marie had mentioned earlier, we're both hopeful that that things can change, that we can be part of that change. But it does become very difficult. Just like on Sunday, just standing there, talking about Moms Demand Action to people at an event, and knowing that shooting was going on while we were doing with that, sometimes it just becomes overwhelming to me.
Yeah, Marie.
So, first of all, I just, from being a physician, sort of learned to process my emotions and allow that grief to sort of just flow through me and not keep me from, becoming paralyzed.
Right.
Because if we don't, nothing ever changes if nothing ever changes. So that's what I just say to myself. We got to keep trying and working within our own circles. But the other thing is that I also try to understand that everybody is scared, and nobody wants their kid to be killed or hurt. So for some people that means, anywhere I go I could be shot. so I'm going to carry a gun,
right.
like your friend at the festival. So for those people, they feel safer if they have a gun, but they don't understand that, more guns just means more shootings. So part of it, I see it as an educational issue. Like we need better understanding around this issue and to remove maybe some of the angst around it so that we can really look at the data and say, hey, let's see what works. And everything that you mentioned is what works.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Oh, and then finally, my last thing is for me, and this is where I think the big area of disagreement I have with people who think that guns everywhere is the solution, is that to me the answer is always prevention. Don't bring a gun into school. We won't have shootings in schools.
Right.
The answer is not to arm teachers, because then our teacher's going to accidentally get shot. The answer to me is keep schools as a gun-free zone and do a better job of keeping guns out of the hands of criminals. Like people say, criminals are going to get the guns anyway. Mm-hmm. Let's not roll over and make it easier, though.
Right, exactly. Marie, what was the trigger for you to get as involved? I mean, I know you were an MD, and so you probably were aware of this problem for a long time. But was there a specific trigger or thing that happened that made you become an activist in this area?
Yeah, it was Parkland, because it just happened to be I was recently retired. My kids are teenagers.
Right.
When Parkland happened, and I just was sitting there at the computer feeling sad and I said to myself, you know what, this could happen to my kids anytime, and if I don't feel like I've taken some action, I'm going to feel even worse. Like, at least I want to know I've tried.
Yeah, we need more people like you. Teresa, same question. What was your big event that made you an activist?
Actually, the same event in 2018, the shooting at Parkland, is what made me get involved. But I had known that there were ways to get involved with Moms Demand Action because my oldest daughter was due to have her first child, my first grandchild, when Sandy Hook happened.
Yeah.
So there were small things that I did, but life was just happening for me then. And I guess in 2018, like Marie said, it was just the right time. And my husband and I were watching Jimmy Kimmel when he did his emotional monologue following the 2018 Parkland shooting, and a ticker ran across the screen about every town. And when I saw that, I reached out right away and became involved right then.
That's not surprising, and you both should be commended for getting involved the way you have. Marie, I wanted to pick up on the thing you said about educating people. What's kind of ironic, I don't know if ironic's the right word, but when you read the list of polling that we both just talked about a little while ago, where 70%, 80% of Americans are in favor of all these laws being passed, it seems like we're pretty well educated already. I mean, do we need to get those numbers up to between 90 and 95% before anything's done? And given this Republican Party, I don't know if they would even pay any attention to that.
Well, I guess when I said educating, maybe I meant the people who have leadership at the Arizona legislature.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But I also mean around elections. So to me, every election season is when I have the most
the most angst.
Well, no, the most hope, if we could get people who understand this issue more thoroughly. There are people in the legislature. Jen Longden is an expert on this issue. And Stacey Travers is a veteran who fully understands this issue. It's about getting those people the ability to have a bigger voice.
Right, I hear you. How successful have both of you been in getting people in your own networks, in your friend networks, involved in this? Has that been easy, difficult? Are you pleased with the people that you know who've gotten involved in any way?
I think, I've been able to get friends and family involved, but I live in Surprise, Arizona, in LD 29, and it's really difficult to get buy-in here in this area because of the the environment with guns.
How about you, Marie?
So I'm in a bit of an echo chamber because most of my friends are physicians, and you only need to see one person shot to have a pretty strong viewpoint on this, especially if you work in pediatrics at all. So, I'm in a bit of an echo chamber in that situation. On the other hand, for my relatives, not in an echo chamber, and so people trust me.
Right.
And so when we talk, I can usually find some agreement. I will say that one of Teresa and my mutual friends' favorite picture of me is me having a conversation with somebody who's in the back of their vest is completely decorated in NRA stickers. Because I'll talk to anybody, and I don't care, right? Like you can find common agreement with most people because everyone wants their kids to be safe, and I think most people will agree on the fact that if you choose to be a gun owner, you should be responsible with training and safe storage.
Right.
That's the starting point for me.
Yeah. If both of you were told that 2 or 3 laws could be passed tomorrow, among all the things we talked about, you could have 2 or 3. What would those be? Teresa, let's start with you.
Well, for me, I believe that a red flag law is very important, and I think that closing the background loopholes is very important. And I think that we should have some type of legislation governing ghost guns.
And Marie?
So my number one would be the assault weapons ban right now because these mass shootings are like imparting such a massive moral injury on our nation. And then for me, it really is all about kids. So the safe storage law, like making severe penalties for people who are irresponsible with storing their guns. And then the foundational law is the background checks. So
right.
Closing all background check loopholes would go a long way to keeping all of us safer.
Right. Well, I hope people are hearing you in the legislature, and those things can happen. We're toward the end, so I want to thank both of you. I appreciate it immensely that you came on today. So I hope you can get more people on our side. I want to thank Stephen Williamson for allowing me to guest host today and discuss this important issue. Next week, Karen McClellan will be hosting. I don't know I think her topic is going to be education in Arizona, but you should turn into that show on Monday, 8:15. I want to thank everybody over at KAZM 780 for helping me out do this show today. And let's get these gun laws passed, people. We need them right away. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week. Because, and don't forget, Dancing with the Dems, May 20th, 7 to 10 p.m., and May 19th, the door breakfast at the Sedona Community Center. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.
You've been listening to Democratic Perspective, brought to you by the Verde Valley Independent Democrats, a weekly talk show focusing on the political issues facing the Verde Valley, Sedona, Northern Arizona, and our nation at large. Catch us every Monday morning after the 8 a.m. news, right here on AM 780 KAZM. It's beautiful out there, folks. Have a great day.